Good afternoon. The time is now 1:15 p.m. and a quorum of the board is present. The State Board of Education regular meeting of March 8th, 2022 is called to order. Marilyn, are there individuals who wish to address the board during today's meeting?
There are individuals who wish to address the board. Today's public participants are all virtual. There is no one in the room who wants to provide public comment in person. I will review the rules. Each speaker will be limited to 3 minutes to address the board, and I will keep track of time. We will be strictly following the time limits so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. It is the practice of the board not to respond to comments during the public participation portion of the meeting. We will maintain an atmosphere of respect for all people, and those disrespecting anyone by name or otherwise will be asked to cease. We will begin public comment. And so, Mike, if you could let the first caller in the room. Is there a caller on the line?
Yes, this is Joellen Kazarchik, Livingston County.
Okay, Joellen, if you would provide your comments, I will keep a 3-minute timer. Thank you for calling.
Former teacher and Livingston County resident. Recent proposed legislation would protect students, maintain curriculum transparency, and enforce politically neutral school environments. Parental oversight rights are already protected in Michigan's revised school code section 380.10. In addition, Michigan's Department of Education Code of Ethics contains several tenets that support open, unbiased curriculum. Especially relevant are the following. 1A, knowing and upholding the procedures, policies, laws, and regulations relevant to professional practice, regardless of personal views. Protecting students from any practice that harms or has the potential to harm students. Upholding parent and guardians' legal rights to know related to legitimate concerns of the well-being of a student. And communicating with parents and guardians in a manner that represents students' best interests. Parents and teachers today are reporting numerous violations of these educational ethics. We must enforce them. In addition, please consider adding the following. A resolution to the Code of Ethics to protect all students. Whereas time spent on political or ideological indoctrination takes away from instruction in foundational academic learning, and whereas parents and citizens have a right to expect that taxpayer resources will be spent on education, not political or indoctrination. Therefore, be it resolved that the Michigan Board of Education will promulgate clear guidelines and enforcement mechanisms that taxpayer-supported schools are forbidden to use their classrooms to try to engage in political, ideological, or religious advocacy, and to prevent the segregation of students according to race, gender, creed, color, or ethnicity, or singling out one group of students as responsible for the suffering or inequities of others, or the rights of parents to guide children's moral upbringing, or that violate Michigan's harm to minors laws, as well as to prohibit sexually explicit materials in classrooms, libraries, and reading lists. Thank you for taking action to prevent our students from ongoing harm and stress.
Thank you for calling in.
You're welcome.
Hello, caller. If you could please state your name and where you're from, I'll keep a 3-minute timer. Hello?
Yeah, hello?
Hi, may I have your name and where you're from, and I will keep a 3-minute timer, and you can go ahead and provide your comments. Thanks for calling.
Okay. My name is Connie Robinson, and I'm trying to, can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I would like to talk today about SEL because I think it's important for people to understand how it came about and who is funding it. SEL was developed by CASEL, a company who is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, and the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. All three are notorious for funneling billions of dollars into political left-wing progressive causes. Castle's tentacles reach back to the UN, not a friendly organization to the U.S., through UNESCO, the primary supporter of the Comprehensive Sexuality Education Program, who partners with the International Planned Parenthood. Now, I think it's really quite shameful that the board promotes programs in our schools that are politically motivated and antithetical to the morals and beliefs of many taxpayers. Confirmation of a radical agenda being pushed in the schools can easily be found on Castle's website, castle.org. There you'll find a link to an article entitled Transformative SEL, Board SEL in Service of Educational Equity and Excellence. Quoting from the article, this article in part is derived from a larger scan of the literature that Castle is conducting. Such scans are done periodically to guide updates to Castle's tools and resources. The ongoing effort is anchored in Castle's strategic foci of equity, adult SEL, and integration of academic and SEL instruction, unquote. Now, historically, equity used to mean fairness, but the progressive meaning today is equality of outcome, and that is a Marxist theory. Back to the article quoting, transformative SEL is consistent with transformational resistance, as it features a system critique and is motivated by distributive social justice, unquote. That is code for redistribution of wealth from the individual to the collective, again, a Marxist concept. And what exactly is transformational resistance? Back to the article quoting, despite its connection to health problems, unethical behavior, climate change, the cultural orientation toward individualism continues to be a dominant theme promoted in the U.S. cultural institutions, including schools, unquote. And that's a bad thing. I mean, this is a clear hit on individualism, which is the bedrock of our society. Back to the article quoting, the Castle SEL5 competency represents large categories or conceptual buckets for organizing a range of interpersonal knowledge, skills, and abilities. We view these competencies as interrelated, synergistic, and integral to the growth of justice-oriented global citizens.
I'm sorry, your
unquote.
time is up. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. A Marxist concept. And what exactly?
Hello, if you could please mute the stream of the meeting. Thank you. If I may have your name and where you're from, and you can provide your 3 minutes of comments. Thanks for calling. Hello?
Connie Mitchell, Inkster, Michigan.
Can you please mute the YouTube in the background? And then provide your comments. Thanks for calling. Ms. Mitchell? Connie Mitchell? Is Connie Mitchell on the line?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. Could you please immediately provide your comments, Ms. Mitchell?
Thank you. I will do just that.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Connie Mitchell, a retired public school educator and proudly one of the first members of the first class of National Board Certified Teachers in the United States. I've chosen today to speak in favor of teaching critical race theory, or as I prefer to call it, culturally inclusive history in our schools. My points today will be made from the tenets that I hold as important to moving a city, state, and nation forward in the creation of a place where all contributions are honored, thereby leading us to a state of equity, equality, and social justice. First, philosophically, the adage says that if you don't know where you've been, you won't be able to move forward in a more honest and open way that will have a positive impact on the lives of our students and, by extension, their families. In other words, we will not have a way forward. Second, ethically, educators are sworn to educate our children. It is my observation that what we are and have been doing for eons is that we are schooling our children. What is the difference? Education speaks to the whole person, helping to shape them as outstanding citizens who are willing and able to perpetuate education as an essential part of being. Schooling, on the other hand, simply pours information into Horace Mann's empty vessels, waiting to be filled, without the give and take of discussion, analysis, real-life application, and other avenues that lead to a nation of critical thinkers. Next, inclusion. I wrestle with why inclusion is fought so hard against in some camps. The misinformation campaign, originally waged by Fox News, has many thinking that CRT is a way to demean and divide. When this theory was created by Derek Bell and others and taught by scholars like Laney Guarnier at Harvard University, it was a way to demonstrate how race and justice sometimes collided, creating injustice for many in the BIPOC community. It was a way to help law school students understand and avoid the pitfalls of racial injustice sometimes found in our court system. Now we are facing a campaign that purports to completely do the opposite of the intent in our schools. In our Senate, Bill number 460, and in our House, Bill number 5097, are veiled attempts to stop the movement forward to a better, more equitable America. It is unfortunate that it is seen as a need to create laws to stop the progress we all truly crave.
Thank
I, for
you.
one, am disheartened
Thank you. Your time is up. Thank you for calling.
Thank you. It was a way to demonstrate how.
If you can please mute the YouTube in the back.
Oh, yes. 1 second. Hang on. Let me get there.
It was a way to help law school students understand and avoid the.
Okay. Sorry about that.
May I please have your name and where you're calling from, and then your comments?
Yes. This is Maria, and I'm from Oakland County. I'd like to comment on a few different things. First, regarding parental involvement. The parents that are engaged and involved are mostly those that are talking at local Board of Ed meetings, county meetings, and also at the State Board of Education meetings. The great majority of those that make public comments are those that are opposed to the actions of the state board, county officials, and some of the local school district Board of Ed members. At every meeting I attend and see, it seems that I see a huge majority of speakers that disagree with the Democrat and liberal ideologies and tactics being pushed in our schools. I want to know why so many parents agree with, so many parents that agree with this nonsense are the ones not speaking out, defending it, and standing up. There's very few parents that are touting the praises of CRT and masking and all of the ridiculous initiatives supported by this Democrat Board of Ed. I also, secondly, will never approve of the political agenda that you're actively forcing into our schools. I guess I don't understand since when our schools have become political centers for children. There should be about learning the core subjects in math, reading, writing, and science. Now our children are forced to watch CNN daily and be exposed to Democrat, liberal, and socialist ideologies on a daily basis. And I guess I don't understand why that is so important to you as a board for this state, making decisions about our children. These are our children, and we did not sign them up in kindergarten for political indoctrination. We signed them up for an education. Third, I don't agree with the CRT that the board approved for implementation in our schools. As a parent, I want the school to foster and support the things I teach my child at home. I want him to grow up to be kind, accepting, empathetic, respectful, and to be a critical thinker. I don't want him to be a follower. I want him to be a leader and make decisions for himself, and to use those critical thinking skills to assess all information and form his own opinions. Critical thinking inspires so many things: curiosity, independence, self-evaluation. It encourages creativity, motivation, and encourages those to think outside the box, to create new scientific discoveries and theories. And I guess when we're indoctrinating our kids with only one point of view and shoving it down their throats, kids don't really benefit from the advantages of learning how to be a critical thinker. It really can stunt their ability to grow and learn and think outside the box and become everything that they can be. Not being a critical thinker is biased, it's narrow-minded. it's subjective, closed-minded, irrational, and sometimes groundless. So I guess at this point with the CRT, we need to think about teaching our children kindness and respect and empathy, and realizing that every child is different, every person is different, and to be accepting and learn from where we've been and where we are now and where we need to continue to go as a society in regards to every individual, not just those of a particular ethnicity.
Thank
There's
you
also
for
special
calling.
needs
I'm
children.
sorry your time is up. Mike, have all the callers who have registered to speak and are on the line, have we gotten an opportunity to hear from them?
No.
There's another caller?
Yes.
Hi. May I please have your name and where you're from, and then provide your comments? Thanks for calling.
Yes. My name is Dr. Jeffrey Robinson, and I serve as an educator in the city of Detroit. I wanted to make comments today relative to the current iterations, considerations for adoptions of policies or laws with the goal of limiting teaching or referencing subject matter as it pertains to critical race theory. I begin restating the fact that CRT is not a part of K-12 curriculum in Michigan, but as educators, I feel that there are elements of CRT that are worthy of inclusion in curriculum as it relates to comprehension and the development of analytical skills. Educators know that the process of education is one of introduction of facts and truth, and not necessarily indoctrination, which is often subject to the interpretations of individuals. Simply put, CRT is a critical analysis tool or lens that recognizes that race is a social construct and that racism is not necessarily the product of an individual's bias or prejudice, but in fact has been embedded in legal systems and policies, and that in order to correct injustices from the past, there must be a factual, honest dialogue conducted in order for society to truly reconcile the past and present and move toward a collective future. Truth and facts should be the overarching element of any curriculum taught in any school, anywhere. So I would caution this board and any other policy-making body from making any policies or laws that would hinder and prevent teachers from being the ambassadors of truth and information that this next generation will need in order to capitalize on the gains and accomplishments of the generation before them. We must not limit the potential of our youth. I thank you for this opportunity to make these comments.
Thank you for calling. Mike, are there other callers on the line who have previously registered to provide public comment?
Nope, those are all the comments.
All right, thank you.
Board members, it is 1:30. We are at the approval of State Board of Education meeting minutes. We've moved to the regular meeting. May I please have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular and committee of the whole meeting of February 8th, 2022? We have a motion by Dr. Pritchett. Do we have a second?
Support.
We have support by President Ulbricht. It was hanging in the balance whether the meeting minutes would be approved. Any discussion? Hearing none. If we could have a roll call vote.
Lifton?
Yes.
McMillan?
Yes.
Pritchett?
Yes.
Pugh?
Yes.
Snyder?
Yes.
Strayhorn is absent. Are you on the line, Mr. Strayhorn? I know, he can't vote. I was just checking. He is expected to join us. Strayhorn absent. Tilly?
Yes.
Albrecht?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. Thank you very much, Marilyn. We are at the report of the President, Dr. Ulbricht.
Thank
few. So I've heard a phrase repeated here a few times today, the continued politicization of classrooms. And what I'm concerned about is the continued politicization of public education. Just this morning, Republicans in the Michigan House Education Committee passed a resolution under the idea of affirming parental rights. That's great. We all believe parents have rights and that they need to be involved in their children's education. Nothing wrong with affirming that. But that wasn't enough. The resolution states that, quote, radical politics have permeated public school curricula, resulting in education that amounts to political indoctrination. End quote there, because these next words are mine. Hyperbolic statements like this are hurtful to the thousands of educators who dedicate their lives to the teaching profession, who spend years in college and then in the classroom learning their own craft so that they can teach a child to read, to count, and yes, to think critically, which means sometimes they're going to think differently than you, who dedicate their lives to supporting children. These are people who are willing to take a bullet for someone else's kids. And to suggest that they're part of some grand cabal is not only offensive, but it's completely unnecessary. As we say to kids, use your words. I am confident concerns can be expressed without demeaning an entire group of people. And I am hopeful that this board can model both behavior and language that allows us to express our own concerns without vilifying the other. I just want to say one more thing. That anyone watching one of our meetings may be under the impression that some members speak for all parents. None of us speak for all parents. Like every other segment of the society, including educators, this is a diverse population with a multitude of opinions and beliefs. And just as every member of this board is also diverse. I'm going to echo Dr. Pugh's comments from earlier, that we each bring our own perspectives, and that includes our own conversations that we have had with parents, with educators, and with students. Again, I am going to ask that this board model the behavior and the language that allows us to express ourselves in a meaningful way, to express our concerns, to raise challenges and issues, but we don't have to vilify someone or an entire group of people to do it. Let's model this behavior. Thank you.
Thank you, President Albridge. Report of the State Superintendent will be brief. Board and community, 3 quick hits. First of all, happy International Women's Day, a celebration of the achievements of women throughout the world, including the women on our board, 6 of whom are accomplished in their own right. Second, congratulations to the U.S. Congress, which finally passed the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. And this was yesterday, 2022. For more than a century in this country, citizens have urged Congress to pass anti-lynching legislation. Indeed, as I mentioned last month at the State Board of Education meeting, the NAACP, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, was founded in 1909 as an anti-lynching organization. Emmett Till was lynched 46 years after the NAACP was founded to advocate for the criminalization of lynching, more than 66 years after Emmett Till's murder. And after the lynching of many others, Congress has acted. We celebrate this belated achievement. It is extraordinary that in this country we have to wait more than 100 years to affirm that lynching is a crime. And then third, Chief Deputy Superintendent Dr. Sue Carnell and I had the opportunity to visit Oxford Public Schools 2 weeks ago. We continue to mourn with that community, but Dr. Carnell and I had the opportunity to interact with students, staff, other teachers, support staff, other staff members, administrators, and we were enormously appreciative and heartened by the work of the Oxford community in rebuilding. To quote not with attribution. One of the people with whom we met, we were tired on November 30th. That 3 months into the school year, 3 months into a pandemic school year, we were tired. And yet we were soldiering on. And then the shootings occurred. And that just really seemed to put it over the top. These are people that are continuing to soldier on, continuing to work hard in support of students, other staff members, community members. We applaud them. We're working with them to the extent that we can to support them in their efforts, not only to recover, but also to build stronger and better for the coming school year. In addition, I'd just like to offer my support and congratulations to incoming Superintendent Ken Weaver, who was recently announced as the new Oxford superintendent. So that concludes the superintendent's report, 141. And now we get to the portion of the report that we have come to particularly appreciate.
Can I ask a question about the grants on H?
Sure, you bet.
Yeah, H1, and I know that we're not to discuss this necessarily, but maybe I can get something forwarded to me. Just the first one, teacher talent pipeline. I see it goes to Teach for America, the $10 million. And I guess I'm just wondering how that will be used to increase the pipeline of teachers. Is they teach at Teach for America and then move straight into the classroom, or exactly, or I mean, they are in there, but I mean permanently, or exactly how that's going to be used? If I could find out that information, I'd appreciate it.
We would be happy to share that information. It's a good question. You are not the first to ask it. You will not be the last to ask it.
Okay.
It's an important question, and it's a question that deserves a longer answer than we have time for right now. Yes.
I have a quick question.
Please.
As far as grants go, generally speaking, is this a part of the budget process?
So,
I know, let me just
please,
add another layer, because I remember some time back Tom moved to do something with the grant, and I think it was before your time, and it was like, we have nothing to do with that, just like we have nothing to do with the budget process that we done. So I'm just curious, what part of that process is this?
Sure. So typically, these grants are grants that had been approved in the immediate preceding state budget, and we are implementing these grants. So we're, if you will, the enforcer of state law. So for example, state law requires us to distribute robotics grants to local school districts. We distribute robotics grants to local school districts. And what you will see in the superintendent's report is the conclusion of the process. It goes from legislation into the State School Aid Act, approval of State School Aid Act, and then we implement. And so what you see are basically the distributions from legislative action. And as a rule, there are exceptions. And in fact, one may have just recently been mentioned. But as a rule, we're supportive of these grants. There's some exceptions to that. But mostly they're pretty prosaic. Mostly they're pretty garden variety or run-of-the-mill. I encourage you not to out any particular board member, Dr. Pritchett, but there are some people who ask a lot of questions about this section, and we welcome those questions. She'll send us questions before board meetings, and we'll ask those. We'll answer those questions. We think that's valuable. I know that I ask a lot of questions on a daily basis of staff, and we think there's a value to that. And I said that with appreciation, and you know that. President Albridge.
My understanding is this particular one, if going to Teach for America was identified by the legislature, not the department, correct?
Certainly in a fashion, yes. Yes. Other questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none. We now move to that portion of agenda that we appreciate and have waited for. It's actually second most popular portion of the agenda behind anything dealing with kids. Ms. Leah Porter, the 2021-2022 Michigan Teacher of the Year, will present her report. Ms. Porter is a third-grade teacher at Wilcox Elementary School and Holt Public Schools. Ms. Porter is joined by Ms. Teresa Ziegler, Region 3 Teacher of the Year. Ms. Ziegler is a social studies teacher at Macatawa Bay Middle School. Did I get that?
Macatawa. Like Lake
Beg your
Macatawa.
pardon. Middle school in West Ottawa Public Schools. West Ottawa in the house. We welcome Ms. Porter and Ms. Ziegler to present their report. Ladies, welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're very happy to be with you today, Board. We'll start with an introduction of Mrs. Teresa Ziegler, Region 3 Teacher of the Year, and she's going to share a little bit about herself before we jump into our presentation.
And jumping in it is, because this wasn't the time it was on the agenda.
I am very happy
you
that
all
we're
are
going
seasoned at this.
Doesn't usually happen.
So, she warned me, but I have parent-teacher conferences tonight. I'm directly back to school, so I'm not so unhappy here. It's been lovely being here. So you know my name, and I have been in education for over 3 decades. I started my career from a teacher institution that was on the list presented earlier at the University of Michigan Flint, is where I graduated from with a teaching degree, and then was one of those that went out of the state because I did get a master's degree at the University of Connecticut and went on to teach for the Department of Defense dependent schools. So I taught in Germany. From there, and there's personal things that go with it, though, I ended up, fortunately, back in the state of Michigan. My husband and I raised 2 children that were not born in the state, but they did go K-12 public school, West Ottawa Public Schools, the schools where I am now employed, and have spent the majority of my career now. So I have a son who is, in that photo you'll see, he is a helicopter pilot. He's a captain in the Army as a graduate of West Point. And I have a daughter who had a pandemic wedding. So of course that's the picture that had to go up there. She is an entrepreneur. She went to St. Mary's College and is a self-employed, always has been entrepreneur, business owner in Holland, Michigan. So we have spent our family years raising them both and launching them both in the West Michigan area and through the public school system that you all have supported and that I speak so highly of. So I mentioned 3 decades. That was just the quickest synopsis of my 3 decades as possible, but these pictures, to me, are pretty iconic of my 3 decades because there is one thing that remains through those decades of change, and education has changed since the late 80s. But one thing that remains is the value and my investment in the growth mindset of students from the 1980s all the way through now. And I don't think that's going to change any in the future. And these 3 pictures represent some of my proudest moments. So in the 1990s, I was a first grade teacher, and that's a group of my first graders on a field trip in Germany. I'm proud of that because I was teaching in a military institution. I was not living on the base, but those students, many of them whose parents were military, would not have been able to go out into the local economy and get exposed to the culture of the country where they were living had I not been able to expose them to that. So the growth mindset of those field trips and getting out there was important at the time and still is, because now I'm on my 23rd year of leading the 8th grade trip to Washington, D.C. for West Ottawa Public Schools, minus a 2-year hiatus during pandemic time. We're scheduled to go yet this year. And so now you see a photo of, again, expanding the visions that these kids can see themselves out of Holland, Michigan, and in this greater world, the growth mindset that they have on that trip, and then embrace for their future. I have many stories of students that come back and say, that trip changed my life. And then during pandemic teaching, covered up by that, what you actually see is the Andes Mountains. Can't you tell? The Andes Mountains, we drew them in chalk in the football parking lot, and we experienced our field trip through the Andes Mountains, expanding our mind and vision of what we see in the world through pandemic teaching. So through decades of change, growth mindset remains, and that's exactly what Lee and I would like to speak about today.
Yes, so we are going to be exploring that idea of the power of growth mindset and the importance of supporting its development in all classrooms, kindergarten through 12th grade. So I just want to take a moment here to reflect on this quote from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We must remember that intelligence is not enough. Intelligence plus character, that is the goal of true education. This quote resonates with me because it highlights the very foundation of a growth mindset, that strong character helps to execute intelligence.
So growth mindset, I think it's easy to say those words, but not so clearly defined unless you live those words. Growth mindset, what it is, it's positive psychology. It's helping humans to lead happy, healthy lives that they're proud of and have meaning of purpose. What it's not grit. It's not work harder. It's not just showing the determination to get a different answer. It's putting more energy into the learning, having that feedback, and applying that new learning at a higher level elsewhere in your life for the rest of your life. Sorry, you're fine.
I was into listening to it. I wasn't paying attention. Okay.
You're fine. Carol Dweck, she's the guru of growth mindset, and she's separated the difference between fixed mindset and growth mindset. And that's been pretty eye-opening to teachers and students when it's directly taught. Yes, we directly teach growth mindset to students. When directly pointed out and taught the ways in which students think about their learning, their intelligence, and their own abilities, as alluded in the quote, or as mentioned directly in the quote that Leah shared, their own abilities can have a significant rise in the impact when their learning progress and their academic achievement is actually pointed out in that you're the one that cultivated that because of your growth mindset. So as reported in an article in Education Week in April of 2021, there was a research study with over 600,000 participants. It showed the results of students with a growth mindset scoring significantly higher in all of their subject areas. The study was conducted across 78 countries. In the United States alone, where there's a report of about 70% students demonstrating a growth mindset, the researchers found that it was associated with a 60% higher reading score overall with the growth mindset perspective.
So equity is a foundational component of growth mindset as its development and needed support for all learners. In an article in Psychology Today in February of 2021 titled Nudges for Equity Growth Mindsets, it stated that strategic interventions and support in growth mindset have reduced equity gaps by improving academic performance among students of color. But what has struck me most when thinking about equity and growth mindset is through the quote that you see in front of you. And it says, at the deepest level, it's about creating classrooms in which a growth mindset for challenge and mastery can take root and thrive. It's about creating culturally sensitive and inclusive classrooms that value all students learning equally, that put the emphasis on understanding and progress, and that support all students to learn from their setbacks and struggles.
As noted in the same article that Leah mentioned, but Carol Dweck was quoted to say, maybe the most important thing we learned as teachers' mindset is that teachers' mindsets mattered. It's when the teachers themselves had more of a growth mindset that they created classroom cultures in which students knew an improved growth mindset could take root and turn into enhanced achievement. And those are three pictures of the classrooms that Leanne and I live in most of our days. Students with supportive teachers were 4 percentage points more likely to have a growth mindset. Personally, I believe that being a lifelong learner is a common character trait or personality flaw, maybe, among the highest achieving teachers. We never stop. The good news in that optimistic view is that the research reported in this article showed that students with a growth mindset outperformed those with a fixed mindset by 48 points in reading when they had a low teacher support. But that increased to 72 points when they had a supportive growth mindset exuding from the teachers. Those teachers having the mindset made a difference.
So ultimately, a growth mindset helps to develop self-efficacy of learners. Teacher influence is essential, and ultimately, as this quote states, children's emotional well-being and resilience are fostered through healthy relationships with caring adults. Now, there are a myriad of ways educators can support the building of growth mindset, but one of the most important ones, and one of my favorites, is through literature.
It is. This is where you're going to see both of us lighten up, I'm sure. And I have to read this because I passionately feel this, and if I don't, I'll go on too long. Books are the windows and the mirrors of our world. They help reflect what we observe and know about the world we live in. It's powerful to read or listen to a story about someone like you. Books also allow us to view and understand lives that are different from our own, like a window into others' experiences. But to succeed as mirrors and windows, books must tell a wide range of stories. And I'm sure we've all picked them up from all kinds of stories.
So as we all know, March is reading month, and as a reading teacher, this month is particularly special to me, though I value and love reading every day, every moment of the year. And so what we wanted to do to kind of finish our presentation was to talk about books and how books provide opportunities in learning and connection. And so today we're going to look at grade bands and show just a small, tiny sampling of books that are options for each of those grade bands that not only support the development of growth mindset, but provide engaging and enriching experiences. So as much as it pains me not to tell you in detail about every single one of these books, as Teresa's learned about me, I can talk about books all day, every day at length. We're going to speak briefly about just one book on each of these slides. So as you can see, I've put a few books up here that would be along the elementary band, and I would be remiss not to go back to my primary heart, and I'm going to share a little bit with you today about the book After the Fall by Dan Santat, How Humpty Dumpty Got Back Up Again. And this is a perfect example of a book for primary grades that connects not only the concept of resiliency, but empathy and the process of walking in someone else's shoes. And what better character than Humpty Dumpty to explore this with us? In this story, we see Humpty Dumpty in the weeks following his fall from the wall and his process of overcoming his fear of heights. What is particularly beautiful about this book is through its illustrations, which provide opportunities for rich dialogue and reflection for even the youngest learners. Kids can immediately make connections to their own challenges and how they work through them to grow and overcome.
Of my 31 years in education, 17 have been in a 6th grade classroom. So secret sheriff of 6th grade. Sixth grade is hard. Entering middle school is a hard enough natural progression in life. The impact of this story is made most powerful when students quickly realize that the main character, whose name is Maverick, doesn't have any more control over his own life than the students do that are in front of me hearing the story. Students are bound to see a piece of themselves and relate to struggles of middle school life. The growth mindset is evident as Maverick maintains his strong sense of self, a sense of humor, resiliency, and a big heart. Life's lessons make us stronger, and we never know what lies beneath the surface of anyone's life, as our students quickly find out about Maverick. No matter how life looks on the outside, there's likely something on the inside that people don't know and don't see. And the students, that in my experience in sharing this story with them, find something. Every child finds something in this book that they can make a connection with. And moving to the high school grades, this is a fan favorite.
Yes, we both love
Refugee. I highly would recommend it for your personal reading pleasure as well. Not just a book for students. Refugee is a captivating read of parallel stories. There's 3 different teenaged refugees fleeing the only country they've ever known as a matter of survival. The historical time periods are not parallel, but the common struggle to endure life is. 1938 Germany, 1994 Cuba, and 2015 Syria are the focus, but this book provides opportunities to discuss current refugee situations that are happening today. Using this book as a window to widen the view of learning through the experiences of others, expands students' worldview, and develops perspectives of the challenges others face, which brings forth rich discussion of both the historical and current implications for those most vulnerable, expanding growth mindset students in front of us that want to figure it out.
So we appreciate the opportunity today to share about the power of growth mindset and how its incorporation in classrooms, regardless of age or content, is a structure that propels beyond the classroom and into adulthood. Now, I hate to have to pivot so abruptly, but I do have a little bit of an MTOY update as well about some of the things I've been doing. So in February, I had the opportunity to begin my orientation into the National Teacher of the Year program. Our in-person orientation was canceled, but our first 2 learning days together were no less engaging. There's a snapshot there of many of the state teachers of the year on Zoom. Over the course of those 2 days, we heard speakers from StoryCorps, spent time working together in small groups and getting to know each other through a variety of activities and exercises, which included getting to hear lessons from State Teachers of the Year. It was incredible. We worked with Google Doodle team to brainstorm the National Teacher of the Year Appreciation Day Doodle for this May. We worked on some initial work and experiences around equity, which is going to be a main focus of our work this year, and had a fabulous session with the Goodman Center and learning about storytelling and leadership. That might have been my personal favorite from the 2 days. I have 2 final days of orientation with the CCSSO and the state teachers next week. So I'm really excited about that. I had an opportunity to visit Oakland Technical Campus Northeast and Principal Paul Galbinski, the 2012 Michigan Teacher of the Year, spent the day with me sharing about his programs and his building. We spent time with each of the different programs. We did visit every single program he has there, and I got a chance to speak with both instructors and students. And I promised I would go back to the salon and get my hair cut once they were allowing people to do that again. At the end of the day, I had the opportunity to speak with the entire staff through Zoom. We talked about CTE programs, and I shared my perspectives across the state as Teacher of the Year. It was really a fabulous experience, and I will continue to share that one of the greatest highlights this year for me has been able to visit CTE programs and really get a great perspective of the dynamic learning that happens in those spaces. So I had many school visits scheduled in the winter, and a lot of those got derailed because of Omicron, but after 3 reschedulings, I was finally able to visit Highview Elementary School, which is the school of Region 9 Teacher of the Year Brian Paul. And I had the opportunity to spend the whole morning in his classroom and observe like the true magic that he brings forth in teaching math specifically. It is student-centered, and it was so dynamic to watch his students learn about fractions. I was just in my classroom the previous day working on fractions, and I got to tell you, I had a lot to learn from him as I was watching that. We then spent the afternoon doing classroom visits across his school, which included visiting classrooms that were doing Michigan history lessons. We observed writing lessons, and we also were able to see a few English language learner reading intervention lessons. Brian commented to me it was the first time he had had the chance to observe his own colleagues in that structure. We had an absolutely fabulous afternoon together. We also had the opportunity I got the opportunity to meet his superintendent and his assistant superintendent, and we had a really great conversation about 3rd grade instruction specifically. And then my favorite is Brian set up some opportunities for me to read books to kindergartners, and he pretty much had to peel me out of there. I was having so much fun. So it was a really, really, really wonderful day. And then finally, I had an opportunity to visit Miss Teresa Ziegler just a couple of weeks ago at her middle school, and I had the privilege to watch her teach her very academically diverse first hour geography class as she was beginning to introduce the elements of the rainforest. And what I loved is, even as my elementary teacher heart was just like, she had built an entire rainforest tree, as you can see in that picture, and there was all sorts of artifacts that she had out, and it was so much fun. Her integration of technology, writing, and global perspective was really a joy to watch. We then had the opportunity to visit 2 different elementary schools in her district, and one of which was a Spanish immersion school with programs kindergarten through 5th grade. We just had a wonderful day of collegiality, discourse, and just the power of observation that we get when we get to visit other teachers' classrooms. So that is my update. And I'm a little bit long-winded, but I appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Teachers of the
Thank
Year.
you.
President Albrecht.
So thank you for sharing that. I'm so excited that you came and talked about growth mindset. Anyone who hasn't read Mindset, I highly recommend the book. But what I love the most is that you took a high-level concept and you narrowed it down to 3 words. You did that. That's amazing. And thank you so much for sharing that, because I think people will really get something from that. So just wanted to say how much I appreciated that.
Thank you very much, President Albrecht. Other reflections, board members?
Yes, just a question, and thank you both. We always get so much from these, and you are part of the reason why we're here, so never too long. What would be the hindrances? I know you talked about of teachers. You talked about when teachers are able to be a part of this, that you see the students being able to participate more. And what would be a hindrance to the teachers from being able to be a part of that?
Are you asking, Dr.
The
Pugh?
growth mindset.
Yeah, so like teachers that might not show, I think, show a growth
Yes.
mindset.
Yes.
I'll start, and maybe Teresa, you can jump in on this, but I think it's also the idea of teachers modeling growth mindset and modeling that through language and experiences and things that they're going through themselves. I know as a kindergarten teacher, that was crucial to help kids understand about how to take risks academically. And when I made mistakes, that I would highlight those and correct them and talk about how I would improve upon those pieces. So from a primary lens and thinking about teachers in that way, some of it isn't that they don't have the growth mindset, but they're not always modeling that for themselves in their classroom. Would you agree with that,
Well, you
Teresa?
nailed it. And even specifically, and this might sound really, really specific, but I can fake model how much they teach me about technology too, right? If I do know more than my sixth graders and how to use that Chromebook for this particular thing, but I pretend they're teaching it to me, wow, is that ever powerful? And I see them the next week and the next week, then kind of saying, oh, I know how to do that. Can I show you? Because it's something that I let them teach me. And right, we learn best by teaching. Right? No matter what age we are, when we can express that to our knowledge to others, that's when it makes us stand taller and it makes us realize that I have that, I did that. So I think that's important. The modeling is, I hope that answered your question.
I also would just like to share too, I think that it's crucial that, allowing teachers the opportunity for really quality professional development. I think that just helps build that growth mindset. I think there are certain teachers in buildings that get lots of opportunities to do those things, specifically if they're in leadership, but they might not always get the opportunities outside their building to do that. So giving teachers more time and more autonomy to be able to build their growth mindset through those different learning opportunities as well would also be critical.
I had not seen Leah's notes on the slides that she was presenting, and one thing she said in there that maybe she doesn't even realize she said was that you got the opportunity with Brian to go visit some of his colleagues, and Brian made the comment, I haven't even seen my own colleagues teach. I said the same thing.
Yes.
I had visited with Leah I've been in this district for 25 years. I visited 2 elementary schools and got to have a tour of those elementary schools and see the Spanish immersion program that I had never gotten to see. So I think, and I was able to say, oh my gosh, you guys, did you know that we do this over at Lakeshore Elementary? And to open myself up to that and get excited about that. And now I have that knowledge and I can now speak with my sixth graders about what would it be like if you were in a Spanish immersion program and continue on, or those I do have one who transferred into from that school. And so I think it's really important that we continue to expand our interest and seek out those opportunities.
And it's really, your excitement and passion about this.
I know, I'm a teacher.
It bubbles out, bubbles up. So, I just, it's good to see. And then you're just hopeful that other teachers with all the other, burdens that are there, that they're able to.
Change.
Yeah.
Well, and growth in yourself gets you excited about new things too. I think as an educator, and Teresa touched on that too, is that wanting to know more and do better. I am not the same teacher 5 years ago that I am now, and I won't be the same teacher 5 years ahead of time in the future. And so that piece of it is so critical to be able to do that for yourself as well. I just wanted to share too that passion piece. That's one of my ultimate favorite things about getting to do this with you each month, is that I get the opportunity to work so closely with one of the regional teachers of the year, and we find this mutual piece that we're passionate about. And how lucky have I been to be able to experience that month after month in building these presentations with everyone. So I just wanted to share that. So
wanted to help amplify those messages, which is
Yes.
really huge.
Yes.
Yeah, because you've got it coming from different angles. That's really powerful.
Yes.
Thank you. Other reflections? Ellen Lipton. Ms. Lipton.
Thank you. And I cannot thank you both enough. What you have literally modeled for us is the wonderful things that teachers can do for our children when they have the ability to be collaborative. We have a history of, as I referenced earlier, an excellent teacher workforce. We are a state that other states have literally gone into and poached teachers because of how excellent our teachers are, and the notion that our excellently prepared teachers are not given all of the opportunities and resources to be able to exhibit their professionalism, to me, would be most unfortunate if policies such as an overemphasis on testing, an overemphasis on other harmful policies that would keep teachers from being the professionals that we know that they are, and to have the freedom to be able to use those tools that they've worked so hard on with our children. We must make sure that we continue to support our teachers as a tremendous resource in our state. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lipton. Other comments or questions from board members? Hearing and seeing none. Teachers of the Year, we appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for allowing me to come
Good luck with parent-teacher conferences.
Thanks. It'll be great.
So the next item on today's agenda is annual evaluation of the Superintendent of Public Instruction. President Aldrich will lead this discussion.
Thank you. Per Dr. Rice's contract, the State Board of Education conducts an annual appraisal by April 1st of each year. Hence, it is the March board meeting, and as you know, we went into closed session earlier today to discuss the appraisal. The board provided overall comments that were highly supportive of Dr. Rice and the job that he's doing leading the department, particularly at a time of great challenge. And I'm happy to report that a supermajority of the board rated Superintendent Rice as either excellent or outstanding. So per Dr. Rice's contract, this excellent performance evaluation will result in his contract being extended by 1 year, making the new ending date July 31st, 2025. And as such, I'd like to make the following motion. Pursuant to the agreement between the State Board of Education and Dr. Michael Rice, Superintendent of Public Instruction, the State Board of Education has engaged in an annual evaluation of Dr. Rice, and a supermajority has found his performance to be excellent or outstanding. That's it. That's the motion.
Support.
We have you're still chairing.
I'm sorry.
You have a motion. You have a motion, and you have support.
I have a motion and support. Discussion, please.
I have an amendment.
An amendment to the motion?
Yep.
Okay.
To amend the from supermajority onward at the end of the motion, to say some found his performance to be unsatisfactory, and to give and to remove the next 2 years of his contract and replace it with 30 days for him to wrap up pending business before leaving.
I second.
Okay, there is a motion and a second on the table. As the maker of the original motion, I reject that. So we can
Can't
then
reject it.
If you're making a friendly,
No, I'm not making it friendly. I'm making a motion. You
but
can't
there's already
reject
a
it.
motion on the table, right?
The motion on the table. So there's an amendment to the motion on the
Okay.
table. You vote on the amendment, and you vote on the base.
On the updated motion, yes.
So I make this motion to relieve Dr. Rice of his position. First of all, due to his refusal to at first acknowledge the divisive CRT, and then given that it was in the blueprint, Whitmer's blueprint for comprehensive student recovery that I pointed out to the chairman of that group that created it, and that the Detroit superintendent acknowledged that he's using it as well in their district. Dr. Rice has then refused to oppose this divisive issue and usage of it being taught. When parents were called domestic terrorists by the National Association of School Boards, Dr. Rice was silent on that and refused to defend parents. He's been using the bogus studies to advocate for taking more money out of taxpayers' pockets. The unnecessary and harmful masking of students, he refused to go against and try to stop, and then his refusal to advocate for moving monies away from high administrative costs at districts and towards the classroom and to teachers. So these are reasons why I make the amendment to the motion.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I would like to share some expansion on the comments that I made privately on his evaluation. And I kind of break them down into 4 different areas that I will expand on. From a chairperson quality and integrity standpoint, you chair with preference and bias like I've never seen in any other superintendent. You've had lots of opportunities to listen and hear, but not only have you not done that, you chair in a way that has degraded the importance of all of us listening to one another as a general foundation of board diplomacy. And it has been a huge part in the breaking down of our communication together. Academic data, we went over that this morning. Understanding that the data of the past few years embodies the concept of how to move forward by looking back, we'd have to honor what the data actually is. We talked about it. Tens of thousands of students have left public schools. Math literacy and graduation rates are all down. Suicide and mental illness rates are up. So what should be down is up, and what should be up is down. And that's as a result of pandemic policy. With such a powerful platform you have, you've been at the center of misinformation and ultimately very harmful actions. We were mandated to wear masks. Some of us chose to be vaccinated under duress. We were quarantined, yet all of us, still got sick. Because the science never supported this leadership or policy with a highly transmissible respiratory virus, and it never will. And now we have the major issues of learning loss and significant mental health illness. When you helped to lead our systems in closing doors, implementing remote learning and mandate culture, that was the ground floor of these problems. And that changes how the solutions need to be carried out. Lastly, I will echo Tom's discussion about CRT. It is extremely divisive. After decades of fighting together in the civil rights arena, you speak as if derogatory keywords that describe contemptuous concepts is about teaching history, or the assumed calls for the banning of books. That's what you use your time to confuse the hate wrapped up in CRT with. So in doing so, you are the new age of oppression. And then you shift the blame of your actions in doing so to those you are oppressing. You suggest looking back, but only apply such insight to your individual bias as a leader. I would not rate your leadership as satisfactory, and I truly believe we must go in a different direction. Whether or not we will, it needs to be spoken, however painful and difficult to do. Thank you.
Before I speak, would anyone else like to share comments?
I do. And I hope that I can get through these notes that I've taken since listening to the last 2 comments, responses. I will reiterate that I believe it was the last meeting that we had over 1,100 responses from parents in support of this board's actions around keeping children and teachers safe. Also around this board's action about teaching accurate history, also allowing teachers who are professionals to be able to teach. And so I want to put that out there first. I also, I'm reminded, and I've sat here quietly and heard over and over again about where we are supposed to be in history, what we should and shouldn't be teaching in schools. And I'm reminded that it was in 2020, somewhere around there. And as we talk about the budget, I'm even more mindful that we had 2 board members that are now fighting for our educators to be adequately funded, our school children to be adequately funded. And these two board members fought children on the dime of taxpayers to keep them from a right to literacy. And so it appalls me to hear us talking about, now that we finally have an opportunity to have adequate funding in our school system, that we have, that I thank our leader for leading that charge. And I'm just appalled that we would have two persons that fought the right to literacy of our children using taxpayers' dollars to do that. Again, I am appalled that we are talking about school attendance today, and we have people at this table who have talked about ending the requirements of school attendance. And I also want to mention that we are still in the midst of a pandemic. Parents are still concerned about the health and safety of their children. As a matter of fact, the 7-day death average was 45 deaths per day this week or this past week. That went up from the previous week. This time last year, that death rate was around 21. So we have not left this pandemic. So we still need to be thinking about the safety of our children and those people who educate them. And we've heard from parents and teachers. We heard today from a Detroit teacher. We've heard from others that are appreciative of us protecting our children, that are tired of the purposeful misinformation that continues to go across about science, as well as about what's being taught in schools, including Detroit public schools. So having said that, I thank you, Dr. Rice, for the leadership that you've taken in these very critical and very cloudy times that we're in. And I would say no to the amendment.
Judy?
Thank you. Dr. Rice, I continue to appreciate your leadership as the landscape and expectations for public education are currently at the forefront of many, many decision makers. Your core values of equity for all children and families in this state is evident when you represent the department and this board in public. These have been the most challenging years given a public health crisis, differences of approach and opinions and understanding of the pandemic, and the public's reaction to it. Yet at every juncture, you have remained focused on the student learner. That translates into progress for the department and for our districts across the state to continue to provide support, services, and direct assistance to our students in an equitable way. The data may not show that, though, as far as I'm concerned, the data that we saw this morning does show that. There's a blip. We knew that was coming. To have thought anything different really isn't being realistic, especially with graduation rates, especially with interruptions in learning, especially with vulnerable high schoolers. Again, I was not surprised, and I expected, quite frankly, worse numbers than what we saw. So that progress has been led by you. I appreciate the work of the department heads, and everyone in this department who have continued to be here day in and day out, especially for the last 2 years, but have been here forever, but especially for the last 2 years, as they've provided their support to districts who have called, who have said, I don't know what to do about this, I don't know what to do about that. I've got children who need to be fed. I've got children who need emotional support. I have families who don't know what to do next. And the department has been here, and that's the expectation, is the department should be here for those children and the families in Michigan. So thank you for your leadership.
Tiffany, would you like to say something?
Yes. I'm still processing. This is a lot of information. What's been said, but I definitely want to thank you for your leadership here. As I said in the meeting when we discussed this, not only your leadership but your staff. You have a great staff here at MDE, and you guys work so hard. And I said in the meeting that that's a testament to you as individuals, and it's also a testament to Dr. Rice's leadership. We have had a lot of difficult conversations at this table. We have an agenda that's being pushed by the Republicans, not only here at the state board, but throughout the state and throughout the nation. And that has nothing to do with what we need to be focused on at this table on a monthly basis. People can have opinions, and I don't sit here and crucify other people for their opinions. I try to listen, and I think that we all try to listen to those opinions. But we have all sat here outside of those people and constantly been crucified. You've been vilified. We've been vilified as a board. People have organized to have people call in to vilify us for either our beliefs or perceived beliefs, because all of it is not true. And I stated, I think at the last meeting, that it's difficult for me to listen to, but it's not just difficult for me to listen to and offensive for me. I'm sure it's offensive to other people in this room who can't speak up for themselves, who can't say anything. So I really appreciate all of the work that you do. I think we need to get back focused on the main objectives. I mean, COVID has definitely given us a turn, being in a pandemic, but also our meetings being taken over has also taken us off the focus of educating our children, making sure that they are safe. We might have different ideas of whether a mask is safe or not, but people don't need to be vilified for that. Parents need to be able to say what they need to say, and then we need to move on and let, the decisions have already been made on a local level by DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services, for some of our districts. And parents get to vocalize at their local board. There's nothing that we can do about it. We have not approved at this board table to support mask mandates, vaccination mandates. We should not, let's move on. And you have the right to say, I want to let my board members have that discussion and make that decision. And I don't want to take a political stance on that if you don't want to. And that's fine. And I appreciate that. I think that overall you have done an amazing job, especially in the stress of a pandemic. Taking on this job when we had so many educational issues even before the pandemic took place. We are not in the top in the nation. We want to be in the top in the nation. And this is a hard state for you to even have control over that. You get blamed for some things that are out of your control. We do have the bully pulpit, and I think that we've worked hard on certain issues to make sure that we can get things done, like with the governor. I think that is amazing. The budget, we have all cried over. We have all been stressed over the amount of funding that goes to the educational system and into some of our districts, especially areas that need it the most, urban and rural areas. And now they get the opportunity to get more funding between the CARES Act, different funding that came through the federal government, and now our governor with this new budget. You've been a voice in that. We've been a voice at this table for that. We should be celebrating that. So, thank you.
Ellen, did you have any comments you wanted to make?
Other than just a reminder that we have an amendment to a motion, and I am certainly not in support of that amendment.
Thank you. I'm going to share a few comments. First of all, I was kind of giggling there for a second because my watch just gave me an alert that said high heart rate. Yes. Way to go, watch. You're absolutely right. Because I think this resolution is shameful, and I think this is a dark point for this board. Let's just think about this for a second. 7 short months into starting this job, the pandemic hit the world. And to listen to the comments that were just made here today, you would think Dr. Rice caused it, that this pandemic was his doing, and he took full advantage of something that he created. He led during a crisis. And I think there are people in this room and at this board who have no idea what it's like to lead through a crisis. No idea. The last 2 years have been unbelievably difficult for students, for parents, for educators, for administrators, for this department. And Dr. Rice has led the department through these tough times with dignity and with patience, even in the face of complete disrespect. He has a steadfast focus on the goals established by this board, and he has had to balance competing interests, diametrically opposed opinions, calculated misinformation, politically motivated attacks on education in general and educators specifically, a teacher shortage, school violence, and the overall ugliness that has enveloped this nation and us. The fact that he still wants this job is amazing. It's a testament to his dedication to public education and the children of the state. He not only wants it, he wants to do a good job. And he's committed to doing the absolute best he can under the circumstances that are far beyond his control that we all find ourselves in. We are moving forward in many of our established goals: early childhood education, children's mental health, addressing the teacher shortage. And for all of that, the people who sit at this table and around this table should be proud. The department is working as a cohesive organization. We're retaining top leaders. We're adding new professionals. The staff pivoted when it was necessary. They worked with a sense of urgency under extremely unique circumstances. And that's because they had a leader and because they know what they're doing. And this resolution is an insult to every one of them. And I will be voting no. Are there any additional comments? Hearing none, let's call the vote.
To vote on the amendment to the base resolution. To vote on Mr. McMillan's amendment.
Yes.
Lipton.
No.
McMillan.
Yes.
Pritchett.
No.
Pugh.
No.
Snyder.
Yes.
Strayhorn, absent. Tilly.
No.
Albrecht.
No.
Motion fails.
Back to the original motion. Any additional comments? Hearing none, can we call the roll call, please?
Lipton.
Yes.
McMillan.
No.
Pritchett.
Yes.
Pugh.
Yes.
Snyder.
No.
Strayhorn, absent. Tilly.
Yes.
Albrecht.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much, Board. Next item on today's agenda is the state and federal legislative update. Mr. Martin Ackley, Director of the Office of Public and Governmental Affairs, will lead the state and federal legislative update.
Thank you. The State Board's Legislative Committee meeting met on February 24th. Several things were discussed that I will defer to Ms. Lipton. There are some pieces of legislation that have moved recently. In the House Education Committee today, a set of bills, two bills, were reported out that would eliminate provisions that now require the Michigan Merit Exam to include a writing component and require a school district or PSA to include a student's high school transcript, a student's scaled score on the area components of the MME. So that that bill is passed out of House Education. There is an issue with that and the fact that federal law requires the state to have a written component to the test. So if this should pass and get enacted, we'd have to go back to the U.S. Department of Education with a changed plan, with an idea of what kind of written assessment we do in high school, and that would have to go through a peer review process and all that. So there is an issue with that bill, as well intentioned as it is. There is an issue with that bill. Also, you may know that there was a bill that was cut the income tax, passed the legislature on a partisan vote, and according to the Senate fiscal analysis, the bill would reduce revenue to the general fund and school aid fund by between approximately $1.77 billion and $1.8 billion in fiscal year 21-22, and between $2.5 billion around that in fiscal year 23, and then $2.5 billion and $2.6 billion in fiscal year 24. So those bills, or that bill passed each house on a partisan basis. It was presented to the governor on March 7th. So that would have a huge impact on the school aid fund, as well as the general fund. There's another bill that was discussed in the committee, in the State Board's Legislative Committee, that would require any changes to the pupil accounting manual. The pupil accounting manual is something we create here at the Department of Education that basically gives the school districts direction from what is passed into state law. And what we do is we interpret it in a pupil accounting manual. This would require that any changes to the PAM, pupil accounting manual, be sent to the legislature and would have to be delayed implementation until the next school year. Originally, the bill would have required legislative approval for any changes in the pupil accounting manual. There were logistical issues with that, and the House, in its wisdom, just changed it that we had to present the changes to the legislature for their awareness. There's no, as the bill sits right now, there's no requirement for them to approve the changes.
Mr. Ackley, to that point, the pupil accounting manual, is that independent policy creation, or is that the enforcement of state law?
That's correct. It's the enforcement of state law. Yep.
So in a fashion, by sharing the pupil accounting manual with the legislature, we're sharing state law with the legislature.
Yeah, right.
Very good.
Right.
Thank you.
And how it affects how school districts account for pupils.
Right. I appreciate the clarification.
Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you.
The Senate Education Committee at noon, or this afternoon, did refer out of the committee Senate Bills 940 and 941 introduced by Senator Baer, and they would affect the Oxford School District. One bill would specify that pupil instruction hours would be eligible for certain pupil instruction hours requirements would not apply for the eligible district, as well as they would not have to take the test, the state test in Oxford. And then another bill would say that the district would not have to do ed evaluations for this year based on the situation in Oxford. So these bills are now to the Senate floor. And with that, I will give it back to Dr. Rice or to Chairwoman Lipton.
Yeah, let's go to Chair Lipton. Chair, do you have any additions to that?
I just want to report to the full body that at our last legislative committee meeting, after hearing a update on the budget, I'd like to thank the members of the committee for working to bring forth the resolution that we all dealt with earlier in our meeting regarding supporting the governor's sort of once in a generation, perhaps once in a multiple generation funding opportunity for our children in the state. And also to, of course, thank the board for taking up that resolution. We also discussed a bill that is being introduced by Senator Wayne Schmidt regarding the teaching about Native American boarding schools. We will continue a discussion on that in the legislative committee. We additionally discussed the ballot initiative that was language certified, I believe, November 1 by the Board of Canvassers regarding educational opportunities, scholarships, and the creation of a tax break for the contribution to these educational opportunity scholarships, with the state fiscal agency estimating that if successful, that might have upwards of $1 billion in reduction of funds to the school aid fund. We are still discussing that, but those are the items that we explored at our last legislative committee meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lipton. Board members, Ms. Snyder?
Can you give the board a brief on Julie Alexander's learning loss bill that's out there? Just help us understand more about
Could you
it.
please, just a little louder? I'm having trouble hearing.
Can you give the board a brief on Julie Alexander's bill, the learning loss bill that she's got out there?
No.
Dollars.
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Sorry.
We're talking about the $500 million for learning loss that
I'll just look it up. It's fine.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Other questions or comments? Could you share the very last item that you shared in your report?
Which one was that? Remind me.
Okay, it's all good. It's all good. It's not necessary. I'm not trying to put you on the spot. It's all good.
No, glad to expound.
It was Senator Bayer's bills.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. So, yes, Senator Bayer has introduced the two bills to help out Oxford School District, who went through the school shooting back in November, as Dr. Rice mentioned that he and Dr. Carnell have visited there twice. And what it would do is relieve Oxford of a couple things. One is that they would be relieved of having to do educator evaluations this year for their teachers. And they would have to, and then they would be given, they would not have to give out the MEP, or the MSTEP or the MME, and that they would have some flexibility on attendance, percentage requirements, and then also pupil instruction hours. So it's providing the district some flexibility in light of what they've gone through this year.
That's right. Yeah, and we are supportive of those. Thank you. Yes.
Just to follow up, though, I just want to be clear, that does not jeopardize their federal funding in any way, does it?
We would hope that it would not. That has to be confirmed with the U.S. Department of Education.
Which you guys will do.
Yes, ma'am. We are in conversations with the U.S. Department of Education.
Thank you.
Yep. Other questions? Once, twice, thrice. Mr. Ackley, thank you so much. Chair Lipton, thank you very much. We are now at comments by State Board of Education members. Do we have comments by State Board of Education members? Mr. McMillan.
A few months ago, I had mentioned that in the Michigan Blueprint for Comprehensive Student Recovery, the governor's how to spend the $5.5 billion, that they had removed the high leverage action in the school climate section that referred to us living in a white supremacy society. And I thought the hot link was gone, but it is still there, disappointingly. So the governor continues to recommend $5.5 billion, some of that at least going to to the claim that we are a white supremacy society. And I just wanted to write the record. I had thought that was wisely removed, but it was not.
Okay. I thought previously you were unhappy that it had been removed.
No.
Oh, I was happy that it had been. I'm sorry. Did I say that wrong? Yes, I was happy that it had been removed, but I thought it was, but it's not. It's still there.
Okay. I thought you were pointing at the fact that it had been removed as a problem.
No, I was saying that the hot link.
You were appreciative
she's still removed. Yeah. That I thought that they said, "Oops, we made a mistake. We are not living in a white supremacy society."
Okay.
They apparently the governor feels we still are in a white supremacy society, and if you remember that exchange with the Superintendent Polson and I, a little bit heated, where I tried to get him as chairman of the group that created this to explain why that was included, and he refused to explain. So.
Okay. Thank you very much. Other board members? Dr. Pugh.
When you asked about Senator Bear's legislation, I was reminded that Senator Bear and Representative Krupa led a press event around the School Facts Act, where there's multiple bills. It's 22 bill package around transparency with charters. And I know we've talked about this, making sure that we get an update on where we are, because President Albrecht, I think it was, that put forward the motion that we explore this issue around charter schools and transparency, and do a comparison of what different school districts are doing as it relates to transparency, including the charters. But I just wanted to announce that package bill 22 bill package went out. And Judy, I think we've exchanged. I'll be at the NASB legislative conference that will be at the end of the month.
Yes.
So looking forward to that. And then this week I'm looking forward to the Michigan Reading Association annual conference. And then thank you, Cassandra, for forwarding me the information about the TRIO conference that I'm really looking forward to participating in. So just wanted to bring those up. The other thing that I want to that I want to bring to our attention, and I don't want to put it out here because I would rather have us have maybe someone who could come in and unpack this phrase, white supremacy, because we keep talking about it. And maybe we all have differences of opinion around what that term means. So, that may be something that we want to maybe talk about or have someone to speak on, as we did with, I think that the speaker that we had last month that Tiffany brought forward was really good, or, someone else who can unpack what that term means.
Okay. Thank you very much. Other board members? Ms. Snyder.
Unless something like that is very clear that things like supremacy, oppression, privilege, shame, and guilt do not belong to one race, I would physically not be present for it. We cannot allow that kind of derogatory communication, keywords, and behavior to go unchecked. If that sits at this table unchecked, it is not acceptable. It is not acceptable.
Okay, all right, thank you. Any other board members? Ms. Tilley? No? Ms. Lipton?
No.
Can't give it away. Dr. Pritchett? President Albridge? Michigan Teacher of the Year, Leah Porter?
Give me all their minutes. No.
Cannot give it away. Do the best you can, but can't. Board, future meeting dates are Tuesday, April 12th, Tuesday, May 10th, Tuesday, May 17th, a regular, and a work session as we currently sit. Board's current 2022 meeting schedule includes a regular meeting on May 10th, 2022, and a work session on May 17th, 2022. Due to scheduling conflicts, I'm requesting a motion to convene the regular meeting on May 17th, 2022 in this boardroom, and to convene a facilitated work session focused on board norms and other matters on May 10th, 2022 at a site to be determined. This modification maintains the previously scheduled dates. May I please have a motion so indicating?
I recommend that the State Board of Education amend its 2022 meeting schedule to convene its regular meeting on May 17th, 2022 in this boardroom, and convene a facilitated work session focused on board norms and other such items on May 10th, 2022 at a site to be determined.
So we have a motion. Do I have a second?
Support.
So I have a second from Dr. Pritchett and a second and a half from Dr. Pugh. Is there any discussion associated therewith?
Yeah.
Please.
So this is not something we typically do, is it? Switch them like, oh, okay, I thought you said that this is something we typically do. So the
No.
oh, okay.
No.
So the 17th, which was,
So it's just a flip-flopping. Instead of the 10th being the regular meeting, the 17th would become the regular meeting. Instead of the 17th being the work session,
okay,
the 10th would become the work session.
okay, okay.
So there's a flip-flopping of dates, number one. The regular meeting would still be held here. The work session would be a facilitated work session, off-site,
Okay.
place TBD, associated with board norms and other topics.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So we have a motion. We have a second. We've had some discussion. Any other discussion associated therewith? Hearing none. Marilyn, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Lipton,
Yes.
McMillan,
Yes.
Pritchett,
Yes.
Pugh,
Yes.
Snyder,
Yes.
Strayhorn absent, Tilly,
Yes.
Albridge.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Very good. If there are any topics board members would like included in future meeting agendas, please notify Marilyn or me. It is 2:53 p.m. Or never let it be said that we don't give you something back in the day. Have a great day.